PJ James. Comrade James.
Okay, comrade. Can you hear me?
Yes, comrade. Yes.
Yes.
Loud and distinct.
So our eminent scholars, Dr. Shamsul Islam and Dr. Rambuniani, both they have explained in detail the political the dimensions. Dr. Shamsul Islam explained the political dimensions with respect to Jallianwala Bagh struggles. Dr. Rambuniani explained in detail the with specific emphasis on the social, on the cultural aspects of this question. So a whole, I mean that an almost what is called a whole all-embracing way of explanation has already been there. Now, so from the part of the, I think that when we approach this question from the perspective of the Caste Annihilation movement and the Revolutionary Cultural Forum, we must know that when we examine the Indian, if you go to the Indian historiography, that means the way in which history writing is done. There are these traditions, which Dr. Shamsul and Dr. Rambuniani both said, these traditions, these progressive traditions are not given that much importance that we know. For example, if we take Pule, say even much before the coming of the communist movement, because the Communist Manifesto was published in 1848. But in India, Jyotiba Phule started his work much earlier, and even in Satyashodak Samaj. And in 1848, when the year in which Marx and Engels published the Communist Manifesto, in India, started the schools for the Dalits, the women, against patriarchy, against caste, against Brahmanism. So this tradition, on the part of the oppressed, highlighting the cause of the oppressed, that tradition is not that much discussed in Indian historiography. And it is, to an extent, it is camouflaged also. And my opinion is that a major part of this is mainly because of even the so-called left. They also failed to highlight this issue in a proper way. For example, the tradition of course, Ambedkar is a different. Ambedkar has a different history. Even Bhagat Singh also, we know that the most famous freedom fighter of India, Bhagat Singh. So this of course that is there, but at the same time, this stream of thought, when in Indian history, if we examine the contributions, the traditions, the views of the Renaissance leaders, the social who worked in the social reform front, their views and their contributions were to an extent neglected also. The main reason, I think that of course the right, the ruling classes, the reactionary, the conservative forces have their own explanations and their own reasons, logic behind that. What about the left? If we examine the left, I am now concentrating on that question. For example, we take the case of the Indian independence struggle. A book written by History of Indian Independence Struggle, a book, a 1146 page book written by EMS, the leader of the Indian Communist movement, who was the General Secretary of the Communist CPM. So in that book, there is no even except a photo of Ambedkar. There is no mention of even Ambedkar. So when EMS discusses much about the so many things about the Indian independence struggle, what the contribution of Ambedkar is, how Ambedkar fought, what is the relevance of Ambedkar in India's freedom struggle, what is the relevance of Ambedkar in Indian social transformation? This aspect is totally ignored. Or I can give you another example. There is a anti-caste leader, probably the biggest anti-caste leader, the Dalit leader, the leader from the Dalits, that is Ayyangali. So Ayyangali is the first leader in Kerala, probably I don't, maybe in India, who led a farm workers struggle in 1907 against the upper caste, who objected the entry of Dalits, the entry of the lower caste in schools, common schools. That is while the kings allowed the Dalits and the lower caste people to enter to school entry, the upper caste, the Brahmins and the upper caste people objected to that. They even resorted to violence. So Ayyangali, the leader of the Dalits, led by him, an year-long farm workers struggle took place in Kerala. And it was successful also. We must see that October Revolution was in 1917, but Ayyangali led a farm workers struggle, a historic farm workers struggle in Kerala in 1907. Unfortunately, I am using that adjective. In a book written by EMS, again, that is the Kerala, the motherland of Malayalis. It's also a book written by EMS. There is no mention of Ayyangali. Not even a mention of Ayyangali is there in that book. But Ayyangali's role in Kerala history is, as far as the downtrodden, the oppressed, the Dalits are concerned, it is unparalleled. But what is the approach? So we must see that. My point is that when we discuss these questions, the role of Phule, for example, Phule is not merely concentrating on the Indian question. Gulamgiri, what Comrade Shamsul clearly said, the book written by Phule, in that book, he was speaking about the African American movement, not only the Indian Dalits. Phule was taking the world question also, the slavery question, and comparing the slavery question to the Indian Dalits. And it was Phule who first used the word Dalit, we know. It was Phule. So and the role played by Phule and Savitri Bai in the emancipation of women. So in modern history, in textbooks, in classrooms, these are not at all given adequate importance, we know. Even Ambedkar, we must know that the scholars who already explained, when the RSS was formed in 1925, it was Ambedkar who could identify the threat, which is the ideology of this RSS. So immediately, that is why in 1927, Ambedkar came forward and banned Manusmriti. Now in Bengal today, yesterday, when the Narendra Modi, when he was campaigning in Calcutta, of course, comrades mentioned here about that. So Modi said, Mamata, the Trinamool Congress has insulted the scheduled caste. Now there Modi is using identity politics. He is deconstructing the caste there in his own ways. So by using identity politics, Modi said that the Mamata government has insulted the scheduled caste. They hurt Ambedkar, they insulted Ambedkar. But actually, who did the greatest insult to scheduled caste? It was the RSS. Because the Manusmriti, we know, I am not going into those details, because Manusmriti treats Dalits and women as subhumans. So it was the RSS which, not only as Comrade Rambuniani said about Sudarshan, even in 1949 and 50, RSS demanded that the Indian constitution should be Manusmriti. They demanded that Manusmriti should be the Indian constitution. So who did the greatest insult to the Dalits? So now this is what we are seeing is a post-truth, what we called, that they are all camouflaging the whole history. A new history writing is now going on as the Europeans. Now the neo-fascists of Europe, they are resorting to a new history writing, a new type of writing. What they are saying, this new history, I am not going into those details, a new history writing is there. For example, they say that instead of Stalin, Roosevelt and Churchill should have joined with Hitler. So this type of a new history writing is there. So in the same way, A new history writing is going on in India by the RSS and by the Sangha leaders. So what the left is, what is the responsibility of the left in this regard? That on that question I am concentrating. Comrades, except in, for example, in 1930, 31, it was only in that draft platform of action, a document prepared by the then Communist Party, Communist movement. It was only there that a clear-cut approach to the caste question, a clear-cut approach to the abolition of caste was taken. And it was in continuation of this approach that an alliance, a unity between the Ambedkar, who published this famous work in Caste Annihilation, this unpublished, undelivered speech that he published in 1936, we know. And it was during the 30s that an alliance also was there with Ambedkar by the Communist Party. But from the 40s onward, what we see, the Communist Party in 1943, in 1948, and nowhere there we see a clear-cut approach to the caste question. Whatever leftist scholars, whatever so-called leftist scholars said, they said that the advancement of the march of modernity, the march of modernity will lead to the withering away of caste. That was a point raised by, upheld by them. So there is no need of heavy struggle against the caste system. And they never understood, as Comrade Rambunyani said about the mode of production here. How the mode of production here is to be understood. What is the role of the caste in mode of production here? What is the role of caste in the division of labor here? What is the role of caste in surplus value appropriation here? What is the role of caste here in wealth appropriation, in ownership of the means of production? So without going into the basic question that where the left failed, the so-called left, the mainstream left failed in India, that we have to see. When we examine these questions, without self-critically examining these questions, we cannot move forward. What they said, I am not mentioning those names of these scholars. So many so-called Marxist scholars are there. They said that the Enlightenment, modernity, what happened in Europe. So this will eliminate caste here. So it is quite natural when capitalism develops, when industry develops, when capital penetrates into the agricultural sector, into the countryside. As a result of capitalist advancement, caste will wither away. That was understanding. But what we see now, caste is now safely seated on the seat of modern industry. That is what we are seeing. Caste is there in the, what is the problem in Indian, the oppressed and the working class today? So here we see that the unity of the oppressed, the unity of the working class. What is the factor? Now, caste is the basic, it is the main factor. It is the factor behind that is behind the unity of the oppressed, unity of the working class. That is the point that we have to see, and what the left has done. So on this question, a clear-cut analysis is needed. We need a clear-cut analysis. What should be our approach to what was the understanding of history writing? What should be our approach to history? What should be our approach to Periyar, Ambedkar, and Phule? On all these questions, we need a rethinking and analysis. Now coming to the present question. So what happened after 1947 in the neo-colonial period? Today, there is an interesting thing today. Today it is April 30th. Today RSS has started. Most of you might have listened that today on April 13th, RSS has started a Bhu Subhoshan Abhiyan. Many of you might have heard that a 6-month Abhiyan is going on, enriching the land for agriculture, making the land more fertile, starting organic farming, and what is called this Yajna Abhiyan, a land enrichment Abhiyan is going on from today onward. Why I am saying, in Kerala, 10,000 such yajnas have started today. 10,000 yajnas led by various feeder organizations of the RSS. Seva Bharati, Vishnu Hindu Parishad, Temple Protection Committee, so many RSS, 10 leading RSS organizations, affiliated organizations in Kerala. This is the national, because it was Mohan Bhagwat who declared this Abhiyan. So these 10 more than 10 RSS feeder organizations have started a Bhumi, what is called a land enrichment Abhiyan Yajna today, and it will last for 6 months. Tens of thousands of programs are arranged all over India. What is the situation? Land, agriculture, and the whole is being now being sold out to the American companies, American multinational companies, and their junior partners, Ambanis and Adanis, and even Swadeshi Jagaran Manch, that also is there in this campaign. So on this question, what is the role of the left? How we have to understand, how we have to interpret all these questions. So I am coming to the point now. Let us take the case of these agriculture. So Comrade Rambiniani made an evaluation what happened under colonialism, and after that how these agriculture development, how we know green revolution, penetration of capital into agriculture, what happened. But what is the role of caste? Whatever development, whatever agricultural development is there, whatever capitalist development is there, caste is safe. The caste system is adapted to, it is capable of adapting to these new capitalist development, the so-called what we made even under neoliberalism. So what step is needed? On this question, I think that the caste annihilation movement has to take up this question in a serious way. How we have to, what happened in history? What is the failure of the left in concretely evaluating Indian history, in understanding caste? For example, even Marx himself, I am not going into controversial things, even Marx himself, he had only second-hand information regarding India. In spite of that, he said that there is the capitalist mode which I am examining here is not suited to all social formations. That is why he put forward a new Asiatic mode of production. You must see. So in a country, especially when Marx spoke about Asiatic mode, he was mentioning about India. It was specifically mentioning about India. And he was in almost all his books, in Capital, in critique to the contribution to the critique of political economy, and in almost all books written by Marx, and in his articles to the New York Daily Tribune, articles written by Marx. In all these, there is an explanation, there is reference on caste. And that is based on that Marx put forward that we have to understand the social formation in countries like India in a different perspective, and that is why he put forward the conceptualization, Asiatic mode of production. But what happened? Whether our Indian, the so-called Indian scholars, Indian leftists, what they did, whether they have made an evaluation, all of them followed the what happened in later, what happened after the Leningrad discussions in the 30s. Even that concept, Asiatic mode of production itself, was removed from discussion altogether. And now other scholars, for example, who wanted to explain, who tried to explain the social situation in countries like Africa, India, they have to use somebody called, some of them use the tributary mode of production, etc., etc. So these conceptualization is nowhere used in India today. So we have to examine these questions. My point is that, so from a left perspective, a proper evaluation of the caste in India, a proper evaluation of the Renaissance leaders, what is the, because as Ambedkar said, what Ambedkar said, political tyranny is nothing compared to social tyranny. Ambedkar was correct. And that is what we are. Now, after Ambedkar's constitution came into being, as a comrade Rambuniani said, Ambedkar want that unless this is implemented properly, and if appropriate intervention on regarding the case of religion and caste, what will happen? Everything will go back to and we will move to a situation where it will be more pitiable, more horrific, and that we are examining today. So what we need today is that unless this social question and so many criticisms are there, even from the leftist scholars, many are saying that Renaissance leaders, social reform, even starting from Ayyangali, Periyar, even Ambedkar, there is a criticism from the left. They say that they never gave importance to, and even this is a general usual criticism that they never gave importance to anti-colonial struggle. They never gave importance to anti-British struggle. They were orienting to the caste question only, etc., etc. So what was is it a valid criticism? Even Ambedkar himself said, Swaraj means it is a transfer of power to the Indian Brahminical classes, which is the poison. Brahmanism is the poison. That was Ambedkar's understanding, Ambedkar's explanation. Caste is based on Brahmanism, which is the poison of the Indian people. And therefore, so unless we resist, unless we understand, we should have a methodology, we should have a capability to understand the caste in the concrete Indian context. What is the role of caste? What is the role of caste in politics? What is the role of caste in social division of labor? What is the role of caste in how caste is playing a role in surplus value abstraction? What is the role of caste in social formation? So unless we have an analysis with that perspective, we will not succeed. So it is here that the RSS, it is here that the RSS and other forces are now winning. And it is here, and even the identity politics, the neo Ambedkarites also, who are actually denying whatever positive contributions are there on the part of Ambedkar. For example, Ambedkar was not an identity theorist. He stood for caste annihilation. Along with the caste annihilation, he put forward land nationalization. Whether that conceptualization is correct or not, that is another question. So Ambedkar could understand the relationship between land, the inseparable, the interlink between caste and land relations. But what the communists did, I am not explaining much. Let me give a small instance. In Kerala, because I am coming from Kerala, I have to explain. In Kerala, there is a land reform led by the first communist ministry. Everybody knows that it is considered as one of the most progressive land reforms in India. But what was the content of that land reform? The Dalits, the real tillers of the soil, they were totally excluded from this land reform. Land was actually gone to a middle caste section by the Syrian Christians and the middle caste. Those who were the real tillers of the soil, they were totally excluded from land, and they were driven to colonies, 3 cents, 2 cents colonies, and now and to the peripheries of society. They are not in the mainstream. And now Kerala is having the biggest land concentration in India. That is also one thing. Kerala is a place, a country, a state in India, which is with just 1% of India's land area, with 3% of Indian population, is having the biggest land concentration today. One of the most progressive land reforms in India. That too done by a so-called left, a communist party. So what is the point? The caste question, without taking caste into consideration, you cannot approach even land relations. So if you are resorting to a land reform, then caste is very important. So unless you avoid this, caste is a superficial question. It will vanish. It will wither away once you advance. When the working class advances, this caste will be resolved. This type of a mechanical approach led to the whole question, and the approach to the Renaissance players, understanding Ambedkar, understanding Bule, Periyar. So all these questions are related to that. So I am not explaining much. I in continuation of the Dr. Ram and in continuation of Dr. Shamsul Islam, I am saying that my point is that if we have to approach, if we have to answer the RSS, if we have to take up this question in the proper perspective, then we must have a proper way of understanding evaluation, a concrete evaluation of history, and a concrete evaluation of the present, what were our mistakes. And if we are prepared to have a self-critical evaluation of the past and a concrete evaluation of the present from a perspective in which we must unite with all progressive forces in spite of ideological differences, which is the main threat today in a fascist situation. We know that all those forces who are fighting against fascism, we have to unite with all those forces. And at the same time, we should have a proper way of understanding all these questions. And we should have a methodology. We should be capable of analyzing these questions. And only then we can move forward. This is what I have to say in very brief. I am not explaining much in this context because both our friends, they have already explained much. They have already explained about the political traditions, the political heritage, the cultural and the social dimensions of the situation. And my point is that we have to have a historiography. We have an understanding of history. We have an approach towards a concrete evaluation of the past and the present. And in that way, we must understand that unless we approach the social tyranny, now based on the caste system, the most inhuman, unique social system that now India is having, approaching that and taking the political, cultural, social, economic questions in that perspective, you have to approach the question. This is what I have to say in very brief. Thank you, Maharaj.
थैंक यू वेरी मच कॉमरेड पीजे जेम्स। मैं इसका संक्षिप्त में अनुवाद कर देता हूं। कॉमरेड पीजे जेम्स ने कहा कि हमारे दोनों पूर्व विद्वान वक्ता कॉमरेड शमशुल इस्लाम और कॉमरेड राम पुनियानी जी ने ये जो हमारा विषय है सो करीब करीब पूरा समेट लिया है। बहुत महत्वपूर्ण जो पहलुओं को उन्होंने सामने लाया है। क्रांतिकारी सांस्कृतिक मंच और जातीय उन्मूलन आंदोलन के मनुवादी हिंदुत्व के खिलाफ अभियान के द्वितीय चरण के परिप्रेक्ष्य में एक बात ध्यान रखने की, भारत में जो इतिहास लेखन की प्रगतिशील परंपरा की उपेक्षा हुई है। कॉमरेड जेम्स का कहना है कि जैसे कि फूले के बारे में 1848 में जब मार्क्स और एंगेल्स कम्युनिस्ट घोषणा पत्र की रचना कर रहे थे पूरे दुनिया के मेहनतकशों के लिए, उस समय ज्योतिबा फूले और उनकी पत्नी सावित्रीबाई फूले ने मिलकर पुणे में सबसे पहले महिलाओं के लिए स्कूल का निर्माण किया था। तो ये समसामयिक जीवन में उसने उथल पुथल मचा दिया था और इतनी बड़ी घटना की, इतने बड़े एक सामाजिक परिवर्तन की शुरुआत की तथाकथित वामपंथियों ने उपेक्षा की।